This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
His name's not Elijah, but maybe we can call him that on this segment. It's Connor OGara from Saturday Down South, national columnist, joining us most of these Mondays, if not just about every single Monday. Elijah, Connor, how are you today?
I've never been called that before. I've been called a lot of things. Cannot say Elijah has ever come across my desk.
I'll stick with Connor then, at least for the time being. We were talking about this potential rule from the SEC that Pat Forty wrote about an hour and a half ago about potentially taking away a home game for field storming, basketball, football. And I think it's funny, too, because Connor's got a tweet on his timeline here that says fixed targeting, not field storms. And I think we can do two things at once, but point is very well taken.
Yeah, I understand the need to want to make sure that everybody's safe, and there's obviously pushback. You can probably connect the dots and figure out, all right, who's had the field stormed on them a lot. All right, Nick Saban, Alabama. You can connect the dots there. Alabama fans aren't storming a field anytime soon. Why would you want to get this changed? Well, we remember what happened last year, and we remember the clip that went viral of Jermaine Burton punching a person of the opposite sex, and you see moments like that, and you're like, how does this not happen all the time? I would say that Burton is more to blame in that scenario than anybody else based on what I've seen, but there is this belief that what if something goes horribly, horribly wrong? And look, I'm not saying that can't happen, but if we're trying to eliminate this instead of some of the issues that college football is facing right now, what are we really doing? I mean, seriously, this is part of the college experience, and if you're following proper security measures to get fans into the stadium, in theory, you're not having to worry about this. And I'm not saying that this is without risk, but to me, it's just one of those things that I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we spending our time trying to figure out? Fans go to some of these games with the hope that they can rush the field. And Arkansas fans against Texas, I mean, tell me that wasn't one of the top moments that you've seen this program have anytime in recent memory. And the field storm kind of makes it, and it's part of the sport. And look, I just think it's something that's being very overblown right now from those decision makers, that this is actually going to be the type of punishment that they're going to face.
Well, what about not letting them use the video in recruiting? Because that's the first thing all these recruits see. I mean, it goes down every time you storm the floor. That's the social media aspect of it. Yeah,
I mean, I think that's exciting, though. Like, I think. Look,
I'm for it. That's what I'm saying. I like it. I'd take if Arkansas could beat Bama this year in football and storm the field, and we'd have to go play them 3 years in a row. I'd sign up for it right now.
Yeah, that'd be fascinating to see play out. Which teams would actually be like, yeah, we don't really care, because if it is taking a home game off of the schedule and you're just giving that to somebody else. All right, so what does somebody have to do to gain that home game? Just simply abide by the rules and not storm the field? I mean, I just don't know that it's an enforceable thing. And it's the byproduct of having, anywhere from 70, 80, 100, 90, 100,000 people in a stadium. I just don't know that you could govern this in the way that they're hoping, to. And it sounds like making threats is the only way that they're trying to combat some of this right now.
Well, I mean, I think it's obvious, though, the league is putting a premium on unscheduled interaction with athlete and fan. I think that's what it's all about. Like, if the deal with Burton and that young lady in Knoxville didn't happen, maybe we're not talking about this. If LSU fans don't storm the field after 2 games this last weekend, and then basically just crack a joke about it with the $500,000, maybe we're not having this conversation. The Tennessee president, we do this every year. Maybe we're not having this conversation. It's just, you can see the premium the league is putting on not having this happen. So when I see that they're writing that, that this is a possibility, I'm not saying it's a done deal, but I'm thinking, why are they trying to do this? It's because they don't want the potential liability and the bad press of what happened with Burton and that young lady in Knoxville.
Sure, and I get that. I totally do. And it's unfortunate. I don't think there's a perfect scenario. I just don't. Sometimes you can present a problem without having a solution. And as much as I try and go against that, I think this is one of those cases, because I don't think the answer is simply taking away a home game for a specific team. I mean, yes, it's great that Power Five conferences can act out of their own best interest, but I'm still looking at this situation going, well, wait a minute, unless there's some sort of push from these other Power Five conferences to make something like that happen, then isn't the SEC kind of on an island doing this? And isn't there going to be major pushback from those specific teams? Or is this a scenario in which you can, like I said, pick the teams who are probably pushing for this, an Alabama, a Georgia, and you could say, all right, well, they have the most say of these coaches. You know that Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, they've got a lot of power in those meeting rooms with Greg Sankey. Are their voices going to be heard the loudest? I don't know, but it does feel like this is the byproduct of what happened last year. A terrible situation that you would like to be able to avoid. I just don't know that this is going to be the path to do it.
So, Connor, did you get a chance to watch some spring games? And didn't know if you got a chance to watch any of primetime out west with Colorado, and what your thoughts are with what he's doing out there.
That year-to-year image was incredible. I mean, absolutely incredible. Like, and I can't remember. I'm blanking on who it was who tweeted out the video, but seeing that attendance, it's incredible. And there were some people that were saying, you know, how could you possibly have Colorado as the spring game of choice on the ESPN airwaves? And man, that was, you see why. I mean, all the buzz is there, and you're seeing a guy like Travis Hunter who went the Jackson State route have a big time moment in that game, and Colorado fans are just feeling good. And the weather was terrible. I mean, it wasn't like this was just, oh, it's 65 degrees out, let's go enjoy a spring game. No, it wasn't that at all. And I'm not one of those people that says program X being good makes college football good, but this is a fun storyline, and it's really interesting to see the way that this is going to impact football in that area of the country, which has been largely irrelevant throughout the playoff era. So is Deion building buzz? Yeah, absolutely. I can't say that I broke down, like I watched like the game start to finish, just saw some of the highlights that played out, but man, expectations are high for Deion and Boulder, and you know, you feel happy for that fan base.
Yeah, that's the other part of this. So there's all this buzz, there's all this social media, and season tickets have been sold out, and like you show, the videos are so different from year to year on their spring game attendance. They got to win games. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, because USC just got better, Phil. You know, getting that D tackle from Georgia, they got to go out and win some games. You're right.
How good's Colorado actually going to be?
But it's all about talent acquisition, and that's what Deion's been doing, though. And they've had some post-spring guys hit the portal. I mean, that some of that looks like the byproduct of Deion coming in and saying, "I've got my own luggage. I'm bringing Louis." That could definitely be playing a part in that. And some of those guys who were part of last year's team, but yeah, it's all about talent acquisition. At the same time, in this day and age of the transfer portal, you can rebuild a lot quicker than what you could have 4 or 5 years ago. And there is definitely a path for them to be able to win 6 games. You get to a bowl game year one. You beat a team that you're not supposed to. You can have these moments without necessarily being a national championship contender or playoff contender anytime in the near future. It's about getting those little moments that have been so few and far between, getting it on primetime TV, I know, pun intended, and being able to kind of see your guys have these moments and being talked about in nationally like that. That is exciting, and that's all good. And if Deion continues to acquire talent the way that he has in his first few months on the job, you better believe they're going to be able to win 6-7 games. I mean, that to me is just about a matter of time. Now, whether or not he's going to get to those elite levels, time will tell. But for now, it's just all about kind of good vibes. And when you bring in the talent that he did, man, you got plenty of good vibes in Boulder.
All right, draft starts this week. I would expect that of the SEC quarterbacks that are available in the draft, Bryce Young goes first. I don't know who goes second. Would it be Richardson? Would it be Levis? Would it maybe be Hendon Hooker, who I think is being talked more about going not earlier like Levis and Richardson, but there's a lot to work with there. So Young goes first. I think that's a foregone conclusion. Maybe not first overall, but first out of the SEC quarterbacks. Who's second?
No, Bryce Young's going first overall. He's going first overall to the Panthers. At this point, if he's not, I mean, it would just be stunning to see I think that the second SEC quarterback that comes off the board ends up being Levis, but I think Stroud still goes ahead of him because I think Stroud ends up with the Texans. That's what I think that they're going to end up doing. And for those saying, well, you know what, just take the best player available, take a Will Anderson. Like, I don't necessarily think that's wrong. But the people who say, well, you can just wait because look at next year's quarterback class. We do this all the time. We do that all the time. If your entire offensive philosophy is why you want to wait on a quarterback is because next year's class looks so good, to me, it's just like we see these guys that get mocked way too early in the top three, and they're can't-miss guys. The Matt Barkley example, the Sam Howell example, these guys, you just can't bank on that. So I think Levis is going to end up coming off the board as the second SEC quarterback, third quarterback overall. I think Richardson's going to fall. I do. I don't think Richardson's going in the top 10 the way that someone projected. I wouldn't be surprised if he slips into the latter half of the first round and somebody trades up to get him. A situation like that, maybe a Seattle or something like that. I think Seattle is fascinating for Hendon Hooker as well. But, yeah, I think it ends up being kind of that order, and then Hooker ends up being the fourth off the board. Maybe not in the first round, but if he does go in the first round, guys, SEC would be the first conference to ever have 4 quarterbacks taken in round 1. I mean, that would be quite the feat. I think it's definitely on the table.
Yeah, it's wild. They got to get those quarterbacks early because they get an extra year on their contract. It seems like that's why those quarterbacks go. Because I don't know that there is 4 first-round quarterbacks in this draft, but it possibly could happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's every year now. I mean, it is. It really is. And last year was kind of the lone exception where we're not talking about all these quarterbacks, and Kenny Pickett ends up going to the Steelers, well outside of the top 10, and some of these guys who were talking about like Desmond Ridder and Malik Willis who slipped way beyond what a lot of people were saying. But it now feels like this is the new norm, and you're going to see 4 or 5 of these guys come off the board because the exact point you just brought up, the contract, and it makes too much sense not to.
That Brock Purdy deal, because they're going to have to re-up him quick. Wasn't he Mr. Irrelevant last year? So you can still find quarterbacks in the late rounds. But, man, that was Shanahan's a good fit, man. Seattle would be a good fit if you're a quarterback to go up there with Pete Carroll. And also I think that has to play a part in the right fit.
Yeah, and for all these guys, even Bryce Young is probably the one guy who I look at and say he could succeed with the most teams and with the most, moving pieces around him. Where I look at all these guys, I'm like, yeah, Will Levis is going to need to go to a place with the right offensive line and having a good offensive line. Anthony Richardson, he shouldn't be going to a place where he should be starting in year 1 or expected to. That guy still needs reps. Like C.J. Stroud, yeah, that guy needs protection. It was great seeing him what he did against Georgia and against, in the face of Jalen Carter, but still, you would like that guy to be able to have some protection and not dealing with a leaky offensive line. So, yeah, I mean, I think all these guys, that is just the key for everything. You got to be able to get to the right situation. It is so much easier said than done. Everybody thinks they have the right situation. Very few do.
Anything groundbreaking that you saw in a spring game this weekend from Alabama or LSU? Anything at all worth reporting?
Alabama fans are not pleased with the quarterback situation right now. There is some unrest in Tuscaloosa these days after seeing what Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson looked like in the spring game. I think there are a lot of Alabama fans going, oh, man, maybe this isn't inevitable that this run of 4 unbelievably good quarterbacks in a row, maybe this doesn't necessarily continue because, yeah, they just had a lot of turnovers, too many just losing plays in a game that obviously was a controlled scrimmage, but I think Alabama fans are used to a certain standard and understandably so. But, yeah, that was kind of the big takeaway was Alabama fans not really feeling great about the heir apparent to Bryce Young.
What about LSU? I know they've got is there a quarterback battle in LSU? I mean, we pretty much know we're going to see Jalen Daniels. Is Garrett Nussmeier part of the plans?
Jaden Daniels is going to be the starter. Garrett Nussmeier could definitely be part of the plans, but it's interesting because Jaden Daniels and KJ Jefferson could be your 2 preseason all-SEC quarterbacks, or at least first and second team. And there are a lot of people who are like, man, if Jaden Daniels goes down, which, this is a guy who ran the ball more than any quarterback in the country last year, even more than KJ, if he goes down, could they be better off with Garrett Nussmeier as their starter, given kind of his skill set? That guy is a gunslinger through and through in every sort of way. Jaden Daniels is kind of the guy that's been afraid to make a mistake, but looked better down the stretch last year and being able to uncork it, trust those receivers, trust the offense. But, yeah, that passing game at LSU, man, it looks really, really good. I know Arkansas fans might not necessarily agree with that after what they saw play out in Fayetteville, but yeah, they look like they have a lot of options to be able to move the ball downfield with a couple of different quarterbacks.
All three of those quarterbacks at Ole Miss going to stick around? Any of them have a chance to enter the portal after spring ball? Who's the starter there?
They're going to stick around. They're going to stick around. I mean, Walker Howard and Spencer Sanders just got there. Spencer Sanders, 1 year of eligibility left. Like he's went to Ole Miss with the impression that he's going to be the starter. Jackson Dart still thinks he's the starter no matter what, through and through. I think Spencer Sanders is going to win that job, and I think Walker Howard is the quarterback of the future. But Jackson Dart has been awesome during the spring, and all the talk internally has been he has really stepped his game up. Having two guys come in from Power 5 schools has really kind of lit a fire under him, and there's hope that he can be kind of the Matt Corral type quarterback they're hoping he was going to be in year one. But, yeah, I still think that Spencer Sanders is a lot more accomplished than a lot of Ole Miss fans are giving him credit for.
BetOnline.ag is your number one source for all your basketball info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest player reports for this year's pro basketball playoffs. BetOnline is always your sports information headquarters this season, as we have you covered for all your sports wagering needs. Basketball, MLB, NHL hockey, right down to UFC and boxing. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games you can play right from your home. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's BLEAV. BLEAV. Bet online, where the game starts.